Bailey's Creek,
Yes.
Keepone, and that was back when they used to dump Keepone, a derivative of DDT. I think it's a derivative of DDT, directly into Bailey's Creek. And that's when all the workers there were getting sick.
Yeah,
and
I remember
the
30 years ago, I swam in this river. And
Will you start over? I'm sorry.
oh, like I said, 30 years ago, I used to swim in this river. But on certain days, you'd see 150 fish float up in a small area, just float up on shore dead. Now, it was chemicals they were pumping into the water. This was a wasteland. It really was when I was a kid. But I had never seen, of all the dead fish I ever seen, I never saw a sturgeon. Never.
We all thought they were gone.
Never seen one jump out of the water like I'd seen until, like I said, I was in my 40s. And it started working with him. And he said they were jumping on, and I'm saying, I ain't never seen that. You know, I was very skeptical. And then once we started working on it, but I spent, you know, every day, this is my backyard down there. Really every day in the water down there. Playing on the river, playing on, my mom says that's why I'm so big, because I was mutated. I was in the water. I am the biggest of the kids. You see me and Matt together, they can't believe we're brothers.
Right.
Yeah, I had never seen, in all my time, I'd never seen a sturgeon. A lot of time on this river, never, ever, until I started working with him.
Well,
And
Matt,
they made a comeback. I don't know why.
well, yeah. Tell me about when you started seeing the sturgeon come back.
Well, it started obviously before I started my
Albert.
work. Yeah, it was. This comeback kind of started in the late 90s, one would say, when the ASMFC put a moratorium on sturgeon along its entire range.
Well, here it started in the 70s. Though.
Yes, Virginia was the first state to implement a moratorium in 1974. But as we know, when the fish are all offshore, they can get caught by other states. So time went by, and the moratoriums were in effect, and so no one was killing. There was no directed harvest of sturgeon, no harvest of sturgeon at all. And then in the late 90s here, Albert Spells, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, there was a reward program, because everyone was saying they were gone, except Albert Spells. Everyone was saying they were functionally extirpated from the James River and likely the Chesapeake Bay, which means there's a few here, but there's not enough to bring the population back. And Albert Spells was like, I'm not so sure about that. So he did a reward program to pay commercial fishers to, if they caught one, that he would come out and he would, you know, do some, sample it, like tag it and do things like that. And I think he ran out of money in a couple months because so many people were bringing them in. And a lot of these were in the, I'd say, you know, from this big to the sub-adult size range. We can talk about that later. From like this big to like this big. And everyone was like, well, they're not spawning. Those are fish from other rivers that are just hanging around the lower James, lower Chesapeake Bay. And then the big discovery was in 2004 when the Chesapeake Bay Foundation trawl right there in front of Westover caught one that was like this big in March. And that fish had to have been spawned in the James River. So that fish had spawned here. So that was kind of a big wake-up call that there's still reproduction in the James River. And when I started my master's in 2005, they were doing another reward program downstream, and they were catching a lot of fish in the sub-adult size, you know, 3 foot to, or 2.5 foot to maybe 4.5 foot. And they need someone to do age and growth on it. Like, you know, you can age a fish like you age a tree by taking a small part of its fin. So they needed a student to do that, so I gladly volunteered, but I was skeptical at the first, because like Martin said, if we were on the river, we moved out when I was 17, 18, so I didn't spend as much time as Martin did, but I saw a few fish kills, not as bad as Martin's and my older brother Mike's and those families' fish kills, but we never saw sturgeon. We never saw one. We saw carp, we saw some big striped bass, of course tons of catfish and gizzard shad, but no sturgeon. So I was like, there are no sturgeon, you know. Again, being, or I don't know the word, but being on the river all the time, like, that's what's amazing is you could have 8 foot, 9 foot fish swimming
Right.
by you for decades and you never know. They're just, it's weird to think of fish that's so big that can just be so cryptic. So I started the age and growth work with part of VIMS and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service at VCU. I was a VCU student, and then in October 2006, it was 2007, someone said there was a dead sturgeon right around the corner up here that was 8 foot long. Of course, as you get closer to it, they always seem to shrink. You know, every sturgeon is 8 foot long, and then by the time you get up to it, it's only 5 foot. But I never found it. And when I ran out of gas in the boat, that was another story. I learned the difference between fuel efficiency of a 4-stroke and a 2-stroke. I was just sitting there waiting for my major advisor to bring me some fuel, and saw him breaching, and I was like, "There's no way that could be what it is." But I knew it was a sturgeon because they had just had that report of them jumping in the Swanee River, and actually jet skiers were going, and the sturgeon were jumping, and they were
Getting.
yeah, they were hitting there was collisions and people were getting hurt. I guess the fish were getting hurt. And so we started to fish for the adults upstream in 2007, and you know, it was slow at first. 2007, 2008 was very slow, and
In a
then we
much
started
smaller
to
boat.
yeah, this was not how we were set up. And then
Much
we just,
smaller.
you know, persevered through a lot of days of nothing and catching logs that were, I mean, I have pictures of logs that we were dragging out of our sampling area that are, you know, 50, 60 feet in this big around. And